Hey everybody, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and probably a lot of you right now are like, wow, your voice sounds like utter trash. And while normally that would be a super offensive, mean thing to say, why would you even think that? This is just cruel. Today, I got to give it to you. You got a point there. Yeah, it doesn't sound very good. I haven't been feeling super well, but whatever. I really like doing this, so I figured we'd just talk about Matthew more today. Anyways, thanks in advance for being patient with me sounding a little off. Here's the deal. When you read a book or you watch a movie, you kind of get in sync with the author, with the pace of the thing, if it's good, at least. And as you do that, there's this inevitable back and forth between light and darkness, good and bad, the desired outcome, the undesired outcome. And one surges while the other goes into retreat. And you can just, you can feel the moves. You can roll with it. And as you know, based on the fact that we just spent 620 some episodes of conversation on the book of Matthew, I think the book of Matthew is good. I think it's like all-time legendary good writing, and therefore, unsurprisingly, we can sort of feel this ebb and flow of the cause being advanced and then the cause being challenged. And now it feels like we've gone through that cycle enough times that the next time the cause is challenged, there isn't really a lot further this can escalate. This is already at DEF CON, whatever the second is to the highest 4. Are there 5 DEF CONs? I don't know. Let's say there are 5. And as we wrap up the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24 and 25, and as we roll into chapter 26, we see, that little hint, that little voice in the back of our head that was saying this is about to take a turn was right all along. Here's how it goes. Matthew 26:1. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders and the people assembled in the place of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and they plotted to arrest Jesus in some sly way and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. Well, part of the reason that we can tell this is taking a dark turn is because of that ebb and flow of good storytelling that I was just talking about. Part of the reason we can tell that this is about to take a dark turn is because there's only so many times that Jesus can be like, God, no, I'm telling you, this is happening. I'm definitely going to get crucified before you actually believe him. And the disciples, it took them a while to actually believe him. But the whole Olivet Discourse that we just looked at, chapters 24 and 25, the reason that conversation even happens is because the disciples finally believe him. Okay, we get it. We now know and understand that even though it seems like everybody really likes you around here, the right people don't like you, and this is about to take a turn, and it has to take a turn. Maybe they don't totally get it, but they get it enough. And so they, of course, ask the question, so in light of that, how's this going to work out? Where's history going? What does that mean for us? How should we pace ourselves? And we've covered that in depth over the last few weeks. The thing that wore them down to the place of accepting what had seemed unimaginable, and that is that somebody would apparently get one over on Jesus, who seems not get one over onable. If you've been hanging out with me, most of this is going to ring a bell for you. Matthew 12:40, this is the first hint, and it's slightly veiled language. "For as Jonah was 3 days in the night of the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." I mean, it's not too tough to see what the metaphor is there. And then over in 16, Jesus continues with that imagery. In verse 4, he says, "A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah." He's already talked about what that is. And then in 21, after Peter has rightly identified Jesus as the Christ, the Son of God, then it says, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life." And you'll recall Peter yells at him and is like, "Oh, no, I'm never going to let that happen." And Jesus is like, "You're like Satan. Beat it, scram, get behind me." He doesn't even say like, he just get behind me, Satan. And then the next chapter in 17:12, and they're coming down the mountain after the transfiguration. Again, like just Jesus is managing expectations here. "But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but they've done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Couple verses later in 22 of chapter 17, "When they came together in Galilee, he said to him, 'The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised to life.' And the disciples were filled with grief," which is weird because the last part, that seems super good, like almost better than just even being alive, because you still get Jesus alive, but you also get total and complete vindication in front of anybody and everybody who's paying attention. I don't know. Death's a weird thing. It takes us to weird places. What are you going to do? Matthew 20:17 through 19 speaks to the same stuff. Now, as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside and said to them, "We're going up to Jerusalem." That's weird. It just it's what it just said. So it's right there. "And the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They'll condemn him to death and will turn him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the third day, he will be raised to life." Then we get this parable about the tenants and they work in a vineyard and they kill the master's son. And then, what did I just say? 38. "But when the tenants saw the son, they said to each other, 'This is the heir. Come, let's kill him and take his inheritance.' So they took him and threw him out in the vineyard and killed him." And then finally in Matthew 23, toward the end of Jesus rebuking the religious leadership, he says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, 'If we had lived in the days of our forefathers, we would not have taken part in them shedding the blood of the prophets.' So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of the sin of your forefathers." It's complicated language, but what he's saying is like, I know what you're going to do. You're going to do it to me. You've already planned it, and you're standing here acting like you're not going to kill me as you protest your innocence and work out the details of my murder. Just go on. Just do what you're going to do. My point in reviewing all of that is to say that when we really zoom in on a passage, we can forget a little bit the stuff that came before that you would catch if you were just reading it all in one big chunk. And I just wanted to remind us that, like, no, this was really, really spoken to. And so that ominous feeling that you and I have as we go from chapter 25 to 26, that foreboding tone that is there, it's there for a reason, because there's been glaringly obvious, you can't even call that foreshadowing, like, Jesus is just saying where the plot is going next with increasing detail and specificity each time he speaks to it. So the overt predictions of the next dark twist in the plot is part of the reason we have this foreboding sense going into 26. But the other reason is a little more subtle in terms of literary nuance. You'll notice that all 5 of these big speeches around which the book of Matthew are structured, that they end the same way. The very next phrase for all of them, I think it's for all of them, I'm going to look stupid if it's not, but I'm pretty sure this is right, is something to the effect of, reading from the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 7:28, "When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching." I guess I'm focusing on the "when Jesus had finished saying these things" part. That's a repeated literary cue, and watching the dance steps that happen structurally in the narrative right after that, I think is going to help us pick up on a pattern. I think Matthew is doing something here. And because the Olivet Discourse and then chapter 26 ends with the same language, "when Jesus had finished saying all these things," we got to dive a little deeper into that to figure out what can be gleaned there. And given the time, oh my, look at it. That is what we're going to work on tomorrow, perhaps with the renewed vigor of a healthier voice. We'll see. Real quick, wanted to say a big thanks to everybody who jumped on to support the program here over the last couple of weeks. That was really cool of you. Thank you. I also learned something new about Patreon this week that a friend told me that I did not know. And that's that if somebody is supporting and their card that's on file that they're using to have their Patreon account or whatnot, if it expires, I don't know if they let you know. And he's like, you should just go look at that sometime. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went in and I dug around a little bit. And sure enough, there's a little thing that I can sort on the Patreon. It's like, oh, expired card list. Oh, wow. That's a lot of people who maybe were like, hey, I like the program and I'm happy to support it. And maybe didn't know that their card expired. So you know what? If that was just a Minnesota nice way of being like, hey, I'm out, but I don't want it to be weird, you don't worry about a thing, my friend. It ain't weird. If that was just like an oversight or something, you still felt like kicking in, you could go and check that, or you could not. Y'all are awesome. Thanks for kicking this around with me. We're going to do more of it tomorrow with the voice or without it. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.